Hello everyone and welcome to another Starscape video dev blog. I am here at the Citadel on the live game to get ready to show you a little bit of a before and after of something that we've been working on. So let's go ahead and check it out. So it's already a little interesting just being back in the main game because so much is different on the dev server. But we've recently been working on something that really is going to change Starscape forever because it messes with really the core of what the game feels like and how the game plays. That's sort of the modus operandi of this entire series of updates, but this one is something that I think everyone will really enjoy. So I want to go ahead and spawn in my Stratos here just to talk a little bit about, how you start the game. So first of all, this model here is, one of the oldest models in the game. It's had a few tweaks here and there for coloration and for engines, effects and whatnot. But for the most part, this model has stayed the same for probably 3 years now. And it's kind of the first ship that anyone ever sees when they play Starscape. It's this slow, sort of ugly bucket of bolts, but that we all kind of love. Or at least I love it. However, as we've been working on Starscape, we've noticed that there are a lot of things wrong with the experience of flying the Stratos, or for flying any ship for that matter. So first of all, as the game has been progressing, all the new models that we're adding to the game are significantly more detailed. So if you look at the destroyers in the game and a lot of the new mining ships, those aren't made by me. Those are made by contributors and other members of the dev team, and they look a lot better than the Stratos. Or if you look at the space station models that Arctic's been making for the Player Stations update, those are just a level of detail that makes the Stratos really pale in comparison. So, in addition to the appearance of the Stratos, we've really been looking at this flight system and how space flight is the core mechanic of Starscape, I mean, there are plenty of core mechanics to the game, but if you had to choose one, it's space flight. It's the first thing I worked on to make the game. And to be honest, just like the Stratos, the space flight system really hasn't changed that much in 3 years. It's gotten improvements, it's had incremental updates here and there, but for the most part, like the way that ships move just hasn't changed at all. And people have noticed that the way ships move in Starscape isn't really conducive to good combat. Combat just feels clunky, it feels slow or impossible sometimes. Dogfights feel basically impossible in PvP situations. It's not a lot of fun, and it doesn't feel dynamic, it doesn't feel engaging. So, I've foreshadowed a lot here, and now I think it's time to go ahead and jump into the dev server to see what we've had cooking for the past few days. Well, hello again, and here we are on the Starscape dev server. Things are a little different here, as you'll notice. The upper left corner of the screen is a lot prettier, but for the most part, it looks similar to what you're playing on the main game. That is until we go to this ship terminal. Now, before I go ahead and show you what we've been working on, I want to, as usual, make clear to everyone that this is, very work in progress. Things are subject to change, etc., etc., etc. But we're pretty happy with how things are looking, and we're ready to show it off. So, without any further ado, here is the Stratos. This is the new starter ship for Starscape. We'll go ahead and get a little bit of a better look at it here. This is something that Dandy refers to as the RTX Stratos, I believe, and there are corresponding ship remodels for all of the fighter craft in the game that we're working on right now. So this is part of a huge effort to really get fighter craft that have been in the game for 2 years with very few changes up to speed with the aesthetics of the rest of the game. We're updating the interiors substantially so you don't just have, like a couple of bricks and a blocky seat. You now have this full, beautiful interior. The ship itself, of course, looks fantastic. There are a lot of things to point out. Obviously, as we've talked about with the ship loadout overhaul, interchangeable weapon hard points, so you can actually swap out these hard points for different weapons. That system's currently in progress. It's functional, but there's not a ton to show off just yet. So yeah, this is just a complete evolution in Starscape ship design. And a lot of people are going to be wondering, about lag impact and graphics impact. And as usual, don't worry. Everything's going to be using unions and meshes as much as possible so that we can ensure that there isn't a ton of lag. I've already been able to shave off 3 parts from the cockpit, so this cockpit is actually only 2 parts, and the old cockpits were 5, even though this cockpit looks a million times better. So lots of things to be excited about here, but looks are not the only thing we've been working on. In fact, looks are really only a small part of the story. So we've taken a look at the entire flight system for the game and really reimagined it to be more dynamic and feel a lot more like, a professional experience. So we'll go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. All right, so here we are in the new RTX Stratos. You're gonna immediately notice a lot of things that are different than what you're used to. We'll go ahead and talk through them. So at the bottom of the screen there, you see the new ship heads-up display. This HUD was designed by Critique and implemented by me, of course. And it's really like a lot brighter and bolder. So, we put everything really front and center, all the stuff you need to know. We have the new speed indicator, which you'll see in action in a couple minutes here. Hotkey buttons are much larger, have more clear hotkey buttons. And then, of course, there's the new energy bar, which we won't get into right now, but will be the topic of many a future dev blog and perhaps video. And then there's the ship hexagon, which shows you a nice top-down view of your ship. And this is where we're going to show off status effects, so things like warp disruption or invulnerability will be shown in this hexagon. So that just about covers the bottom part of the screen. In the upper right, you're going to see a few boxes. Those are actually work in progress targeting system placeholders. So we may or may not get into that today, but again, will be the topic of many a future dev blog. And then we get to the center of the screen. And this is really exciting. This has just been working on the past couple days, but we've really reimagined the flight experience for the game. So not just the interface is different, but the way ships work is just a little different, and the way ships move and feel. And so that center of the screen reticle is very important, and we're going to see why in a second. But before we talk about that, let's go ahead and take off here. View the beautiful landing gear retracting on the RTX Stratos, and let's go ahead and fly on out. So I'm going to start turning here, and you should immediately notice a pretty substantial difference from the main game. The camera movements have been made to be a lot more dynamic. We've made it feel like you're moving a lot more, which we're pretty excited about. It's difficult for you to really get a fantastic idea of just how much better it feels. But believe me, it is night and day feeling just how responsive the controls are. One of the big issues with fighter controls in Starscape was how floaty they were. So, for example, if you were turning, you would turn, 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 and then as soon as you wanted to stop turning, your ship would keep turning for a solid couple seconds. And now it's a lot easier to really snap to things because in the old system you really couldn't snap to objects because your ship would overturn. But now it's really simple to just snap to objects on the screen because that overturning is no longer an issue. But the actual turn rate and agility of ships hasn't been necessarily changed too much in that way. However, agility has been modified in other ways. So, for example, it's pretty obvious to me. We'll see how obvious it is to all of you. Right now I'm flying at full speed, which is now 260 in the Stratos. Again, subject to change, but it feels pretty good to us. And you'll notice that I'm turning pretty well. It's a relatively agile ship. We want to give new players a better idea of what flying in Starscape feels like. We don't want people to be turned off by their first flight experience. But actually, we've also made it so that when I slow down now, my ship actually turns a lot faster. So it's a lot easier to do a 180 going from a dead stop. And while this isn't necessarily crazy realistic in terms of spaceflight, it is something that should make dogfighting a little bit more tactical and just fighter combat in general. Because now instead of just gunning at full speed and constantly turning, it might be advantageous for you to, take a little bit of a sharper turn and then get back into the fight. So instead of just circling each other endlessly, maybe now someone could get an upper hand in combat. Another thing that's going to help with that is that we've increased ship speeds across the board for fighter craft. So all fighter craft are going to be going substantially faster. We haven't worked out all the base speeds, but you'll notice that the Stratos got about a 30% boost or so, and it's going to be pretty similar for most ships in the game. Now, what that's obviously going to make you wonder is, are you going to actually be able to hit anyone? Because that's another one of the issues with the game is that because we do server validation of damage, we have an issue where when ships are going particularly fast, it's just really hard to hit them. It's hard to hit them anyway, but then once you put in server mechanics and you consider all of the issues with lag, it really becomes hard to hit anyone. So we have addressed this, and what we've done actually is made it so that there's a little bit of an increase in the size of your ship hitbox as your ship is going faster. And so this will apply to player ships, and it will also apply to NPC ships, which are getting similar speed increases. So as you're flying faster and faster, your hitbox will increase slightly in size, but we're making sure that it's just enough that you can be hit, and it's not so much that going faster is going to be disadvantageous to you. And we're going to balance that out very carefully, so fear not on that front. In addition, one of the things that might help you hit some of these faster targets are the new lasers. So we took a look at lasers, and right now in the game, I think lasers go at approximately 1,500 meters per second, something like that. So it's faster than it once was. It used to be 800. So they've gotten a pretty decent speed boost. These new lasers that I'm about to show off travel much, much faster. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. So these are the new main armament. This is going to be the burst laser, or similar. It's basically the equivalent of the repeater. They travel a lot faster, as you're going to notice. And it's difficult to really explain how much better it feels. A lot of this is just, it just feels so much better. You can actually hit things. You can hit things at a distance. It feels incredible. You're also going to be noticing that there is now an overheat mechanic for fighter craft. We're making fighters. If we left fighters with all these improvements exactly the way they were, they would be pretty darn overpowered because their lasers are so much faster. So we're adding an overheat mechanic for a couple of reasons. Both that reason that to prevent them from being overpowered, but in addition we want to add other avenues for balance. So different hardpoints will have different overheat times, different reload times, etc. And so I'll go ahead and show what it looks like when you do overheat. There's not really much of an effect right now, but you're going to notice you hit red and it stays red until you burn back down. So it's just a momentary lapse in ability. There'll be some additional effects that happen that have not been completed yet, and the cooldown time might wind up being a little longer than that, just to make it slightly more punishing. But in general, the idea behind reload is it's something that you're going to be thinking about in the back of your head, but we never want you to get particularly anxious about it. It's mostly to prevent spamming and to balance out fighters just a little bit. So those are all of the core changes that have been made. In addition, you're going to see down there, you'll see the minimap is also making an appearance, and I don't believe we've shown that off before. But now I'm going to go ahead and, honestly, I'll go ahead and just warp to Aegis, and we can check out some additional features of the minimap. So you'll notice in that the new warp indicator is above the hexagon. It tells you how long you are until you get to your target. We also show your max warp speed and your fraction of your warp speed and the new speed indicator. Alright, so here we are. It looks like we've got a little drone fire team. We do, in fact, have them on the minimap there, so you can see a little bit of how it works. So the minimap is super responsive, of course. Oh, and I'm getting shot at. Pardon me, I'm really bad at combat, so this is going to be embarrassing, but I'll show off sort of how the minimap works. So you'll notice as I highlight different ships, they'll actually be highlighted on the minimap, which is kind of fun. And in addition to that, it's really easy to turn and see where all the ships are. So if I kind of lose them right here, I don't know exactly where they are. I know, oh, okay, one's right behind me, right here. So yeah, the minimap makes things way easier just to see where you are. So let's go ahead and try out these lasers on some of these drones. So we've also been messing around with hitboxes, as mentioned. So hitboxes are a little wonky right now for the NPCs, but it's being worked on. The goal is to have that every ship will have a custom form-fitting hitbox that's really perfectly tailor-made for it. Currently, it's a collection of boxes generally. But something interesting we can do, so this is going to be a little broken, but I think it's still worth showing off. If I go ahead and target this light drone interceptor here, so now I'm targeting it. And something that you can see is that I'm testing out a new leading target indicator. So it tells you sort of where you should be firing at. It's not perfect right now, and it really doesn't make too much of a difference in close engagements. But it's something that we're planning to integrate into the targeting system so that you can actually see where you need to fire at for targets that you have as your primary target. Now, I can't assure you that this isn't going to make combat like magically super easy or anything, and if you think it does, I can't really help you. It's not any sort of auto aim system. It's just like a bit of an assist to help you visually get an idea of where you need to be aiming at, especially because due to camera angles in the game, knowing where exactly to aim is honestly really difficult sometimes, depending on how your camera is lined up with your target. So giving a little bit of an assist for your active target is something that we definitely are interested in doing. And pardon that bug right there. Well, we're back at the Citadel, and before we wrap things up here, there were just a couple other things that I forgot to mention while we were actually in combat related to the targeting reticle. So once we get out of warp here, so the first thing to note is that the diamond reticle that you're seeing in the center there is showing you the forward position of your ship. So that's where your ship is aiming. Something kind of cool that you'll notice is that it's actually not moving a lot from the center of the screen. So we focus a lot more on camera rotation now to get that effect, but your actual like your ship's central line is still always sort of going straight down the center of your screen. It moves around a little bit, but this is kind of nice just to keep you sort of centered. Um, when things aren't moving around quite so much, it's a little easier for you to figure out exactly what's going on. The one thing that is moving, of course, is this giant aiming reticle. And the reason that the aiming reticle is moving around is that even though your ship is facing that diamond, where you shoot is going to follow the circular aiming reticle. So the weapons are actually essentially they're gimbaled weapons. Their models don't move, but they do have a bit of an aiming arc. So they will fire a little bit off of the central axis of your ship. So where you are going is where you'll fire, and it makes it a little bit easier to line up your shots. It makes it a little easier to follow a target and continue firing. In general, it's just an overall improvement. And even though you can't really feel what all this is like right now, I hope you trust me when I say it feels a lot better, and it does look a lot better too. So hopefully that's enough encouragement for you. Well, that is just about all I have for today's dev blog. I hope you like what you see as always, and we will be continuing to keep you updated on all this progress as well as the progress on the other new RTX ship designs, which will be coming relatively soon. So this remodel effort is going to be coming out as part of the 1.0 full release, as with all updates that we've been talking about recently, will be coming out at the same time in that full release. So get excited for it. The game is going to be changed. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.